Good morning, or at least, that's what the broadcast wanted you to believe. A smiling set, cheerful voices, and promises of a brand new day. But when the cameras rolled, the cracks began to show blood in the coffee. Laughter without an audience, and hosts who never stop smiling. This is the morning show, and once you tune in, there's no tuning out. Bright and early. The screen faded in with the familiar jingle, bright horns and cheerful piano notes. The kind of sound that normally told viewers they could relax, sip their coffee, and let the world ease them into another day. The set glowed with pastel blues and yellows, sunlight beaming in through the tall windows. The words "Good morning" with Claire and Dan flashed across the screen before dissolving into the sight of the hosts sitting side by side at the shining white desk. Claire's smile was wide, bright, a little too wide. "Good morning, everyone," she chirped, her voice carrying that rehearsed warmth television demanded. "It's a beautiful day in the city, and we're here to bring you the news, the laughs, and all the energy you need to start your day right." Dan laughed, though his laugh felt delayed, like someone had pressed the wrong button in a sound booth. That's right, Sunshine, clear skies, and plenty of reasons to stay inside it. Stay tuned. He smoothed his papers nervously, eyes flickering toward the camera just a second too long. Behind them, the massive window revealed the skyline. The view looked crisp and clear, though if you watched closely, not a single car moved on the highway. Not a single pedestrian walked the sidewalks below. It was like a photograph instead of a live view, but the host didn't acknowledge it. Claire shuffled the cue cards in front of her and continued with perfect pep. "First up this morning, we have a recipe segment to get you going. Our guest chef is here with a hearty breakfast you'll definitely want to try." The camera cut to the side counter, where a chef in a spotless apron smiled stiffly. His cutting board was laid out neatly with bread, eggs, and a glass pitcher. At first glance, it looked like orange juice, but its deep, rusty hue was closer to red than orange. "Good morning," the chef said, voice low and gravelly. "Today, we're making a sustaining breakfast. Protein is very important these days. You never know when you'll need your strength." He reached for the bread knife, tested its sharpness with his thumb, and smiled faintly. "It's good to keep your knives sharp. You'll thank yourself when they come back." The remark passed without explanation. Claire clapped her hands together, nodding as though he had given a completely ordinary cooking tip. "That's fantastic advice," she said, her smile straining. The camera cut back to Dan, who shuffled his papers again and forced another chuckle. "Speaking of advice, let's check in on the weather. Clear skies mean another perfect day too. Well, let's take a look." The screen shifted to the weather map, bright green and blue, a cheery graphic showing sun icons across the region. But in the corner of the map, the word "signal lost" flashed briefly before disappearing. The weatherman's voiceover was equally cheerful, but stuttered. "Sunny skies, high of 74, perfect conditions for staying inside, locking the doors, and keeping the curtains drawn. Remember, sunlight can't always hide the shadows." The broadcast glitched, and for a half second, the weather feed showed a grainy, static-filled shot of an empty street with overturned trash bins and long smears of something dark across the pavement. Then the image corrected itself, bright sunshine and cartoons once more. Claire's voice broke the silence. "Sounds like a wonderful day." She let out a laugh that was just a little too loud. The studio's laugh track suddenly chimed in hollow, mechanical laughter that filled the silence and then stopped abruptly, as if someone had cut the cord. The chef began whisking eggs in the background, his hand shaking ever so slightly. He set the whisk down, turned to the camera, and whispered, "Don't change the channel." His eyes were wide, desperate, though his lips still stretched into that thin smile. The camera cut back to Claire and Don, who were both frozen in their seats for a moment, smiling at nothing. Then, as if on cue, they both laughed, loud and unnatural, their voices overlapping the silence. Dan leaned closer to the desk, tapping his papers nervously. "We'll be right back after this short break. Don't go anywhere." The screen cut to commercial, though the image that replaced them wasn't an advertisement, it was a looping clip of an empty living room. Curtains swaying as if from a breeze, a clock on the wall ticking far too fast. The upbeat jingle played again, but the cheer felt hollow now. Cracks in the script. The cheery jingle faded back in, horns blaring, piano tinkling, as though nothing had happened. The title card spun across the screen again. Good morning with Claire and Dan. And when the studio lights came back on, both hosts were smiling even wider than before. Claire clasped her hands together on the desk, leaning forward with the kind of perkiness that came off more like desperation now. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you're enjoying your morning as much as we are here in the studio. Don nodded, though sweat glistened on his forehead under the hot studio lights. His tie was crooked now, his collar unbuttoned. That's right, Claire. It's another great day to be alive. He stumbled slightly over the word alive, his voice cracking, but pressed on. Behind them, the skyline backdrop still showed its frozen perfection. Cloudless skies, still cars, motionless streets. The illusion flickered once, like a bad green screen, and for a split second, a darker image bled through what looked like the same skyline, but cloaked in smoke. Fires rising from the buildings, something shambling across the rooftops. Claire's smile tightened as the glitch ended. She shuffled her cue cards. We've got something very special now, she said. Her tone pitched high to cover the static still buzzing faintly in the speakers. It's time for our daily health check-in. The camera cut to a tall, pale doctor in a white coat, who was already seated at the side table. His eyes darted nervously to the corners of the studio. He held a clipboard, though the pages fluttered despite the air being still. Good morning, the doctor said. His voice wavered. Health is critical. We urge viewers to stay hydrated, keep quiet, and avoid. He hesitated. His lips trembled, then he forced a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Avoid panic. The teleprompter scrolled too fast behind the camera, and the doctor's eyes flicked across the words. His voice grew rushed, urgent, as if trying to say more than he was allowed. If you hear scratching at the windows, if you smell rot in the air, do not answer. Do not open the doors. They're listening. There, the feed cut sharply to Dan, who laughed too loudly, his face rigid. Thank you, Doctor. Very useful advice. Stay healthy, folks. He tugged his tie again, knuckles white against the silk. The laugh track sputtered and played again, too long this time, filling the silence like canned madness. The chef was still at the counter, though now the cutting board was empty. He stood motionless, staring into the camera with wide, glassy eyes. His apron was smeared, though the studio lights bleached out the color. He lifted the bread knife, holding it loosely in one hand. His lips moved soundlessly, forming words only the sharpest-eyed viewer could catch. They're already here. Claire's smile faltered, her eyes twitching toward him, but she forced herself to continue. We'll be checking in on your calls later this morning, but first let's talk about the day's headlines. She looked at her cue card and froze. Her hand trembled slightly. The words printed there weren't news items. In thick, black block letters, the card read, "Do not look behind you." Her breathing hitched. She swallowed hard, flipped to the next card, and the same words glared up at her. She forced her mouth into a smile and looked directly into the camera, her voice shaking beneath the cheer. "Ahima, yes, we'll be bringing you only the brightest stories today. Nothing to worry about at all." Dan interrupted, slamming his stack of papers onto the desk with trembling hands. "Stop," he whispered, voice breaking the forced tone. "Stop pretending. They need to know." The studio lights flickered, the skyline backdrop glitched again, and this time the smoke-filled city lingered longer. A siren wailed faintly in the distance of that other reality, carried through the static. Dan leaned toward the camera, his forced grin gone, his face pale and terrified. "Don't go outside," he rasped. "Don't trust the broadcasts. The air isn't safe." The feed cut abruptly to black for half a second, then returned to Claire alone, smiling stiffly at the desk. Dan was gone. His chair sat empty beside her. Her voice shook but pressed on. "We'll be right back with more of Good Morning with Claire and Dan after this short break." The jingle played again, but the cheery horns warped, slowed like a record melting on a turntable, and in the silence before the commercials rolled, one sound bled through a faint scratching, close, as though it came from just outside the studio walls. The studio unravels. The broadcast resumed with the jingle once again, though now it was warped and distorted. The cheerful horns dragging out into a groan, the piano clanging like it was out of tune. When the cameras came back on, Claire sat at the desk alone. Her smile plastered firmly in place, though her hands trembled as they gripped the cue cards. "Welcome back to Good Morning with Claire and Dan," she said. Her voice wavered. "Dan has stepped away for just a moment. Everything is fine. Everything is perfectly fine." The backdrop of the city skyline flickered again. For 1 second, the screen behind her went black. Then, faintly, shadowy figures appeared in the windows of the frozen skyscrapers. Dozens of them. Their movements were jerky, glitching between frames like bad animation. Then, just as quickly, the image corrected itself to bright sunlight and empty streets. Claire glanced toward the chef, perhaps hoping for some sense of normalcy, but he was gone. Only the blood-smeared cutting board remained, the knife still glinting under the studio lights. The camera panned too far for a moment, catching sight of something smeared across the studio floor, something that looked like drag marks leading off stage. The feed cut back to Claire before viewers could linger on it. She shuffled her cards and tried again. Coming up next, we have She froze, staring at the teleprompter. Her smile faltered, her lips moving soundlessly. Whatever words she saw scrolling, they weren't safe to say aloud. Static burst across the screen, drowning the picture for a moment. Then, out of nowhere, Dan's voice broke through the static. Not live, but like a recording playing over the feed. "Don't listen to her," his voice rasped. "It's in the script. They make us read it. It's not ours anymore. If you can hear me, turn off your TV. Don't let it." The sound cut out mid-sentence. Claire stared directly into the camera, her eyes wide, as though she had heard him too. Then, in an almost robotic tone, she said, "Thank you, Dan. We'll check back in with you later." The laugh track erupted again, though no one had laughed. It overlapped her words, echoing unnaturally, distorted, until it no longer sounded human at all. Suddenly, the studio lights flickered. The camera angle changed on its own, cutting to a wide shot of the entire set. Behind Claire, something moved. The window backdrop glitched one more time, and this time it stayed broken, showing the real skyline now, choked in smoke and fire. Dark shapes filled the streets below, swarming, colliding, clawing at the buildings. Claire's voice cracked. We have to stay calm. We have to." She stopped, her breathing shallow. "They told me if I don't keep smiling, they'll come in." The words slipped out before she realized what she had said. Her hand shot to her mouth, but it was too late. The studio doors rattled violently, something slamming against them from the outside. The sound echoed through the room, metal bending under the weight of dozens of blows. Claire's smile twitched, faltering between terror and grief. The teleprompter scrolled again, massive words filling the screen for her to read. "Stay seated. Keep smiling. The viewers are watching." Her lips quivered as she forced the words out. "Everything is fine. Please remain calm. We are here with you." The broadcast cut suddenly to another angle, as though the cameras themselves were deciding what to show. This time, it focused on the hallway outside the studio. The picture was grainy, static bleeding into the corners, but it showed figures pressing against the glass, their faces pale, their mouths hanging open in soundless screams. One slammed its head against the window, again and again, leaving cracks in the glass. Claire whispered, "Please, no." The feed snapped back to her at the desk. Her smile was gone now. Tears streaked her face, her makeup smudging under the hot lights. She stared into the camera, into the homes of whoever was still watching. "They said if we keep the show running, maybe it will keep them away," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But it doesn't work. Nothing works. If you're watching this, turn it off. Hide. Don't let them know you can hear." The studio doors screeched as the hinges began to bend. Something pushed them inward, a clawed hand scraping through the gap. The screen went to static, and for a full 10 seconds, there was only the sound of breathing loud, ragged, right next to the microphone. Then silence. The broadcast cut to black. The jingle played one final time, warped and broken, like a carnival song dragging itself to death. The final sign-off when the broadcast flickered back. The familiar jingle tried to play once more, but this time it was unrecognizable. The horns dragged in a low, groaning note. The piano clashed in discord, and the melody collapsed in on itself like it was being chewed apart. The camera came into focus on Claire. She was still at the desk, but her makeup had melted down her face under the heat of the studio lights. Mascara streaking her cheeks. Her smile was gone completely. She didn't even try anymore. Her hands clutched the cue cards so tightly, the edges crumpled. "This is Good Morning with Claire and Dan," she whispered hoarsely. "Except Dan is gone. The chef is gone. Everyone is gone." Behind her, the backdrop of the city had stopped pretending. The glass revealed the true skyline. Smoke rising in black plumes. Fire eating through rooftops. Hordes moving through the streets like a river of shadows. The sound was faint at first, but grew louder with every passing second. Low moans, distant screams, and the pounding of countless footsteps. Claire tried to keep reading from the teleprompter, but the words scrolled faster and faster. "Keep smiling. Keep talking. Keep the viewers calm." She shook her head. "No, I can't. You don't understand. They're already here." The studio doors rattled violently again, louder this time. Something heavy slammed into them, denting the metal. A long, splintering crack spread across the glass panel at the top. Claire dropped the cue cards. She leaned forward, her face filling the frame, staring directly into the camera with wild, desperate eyes. "If anyone is still out there, don't trust what you see on television. Don't trust the voices on the radio. They've taken over the signals. They use us to distract you, to keep you tuned in. They think if you're watching, you won't be running." Static hissed across the feed, but her words forced their way through. She gasped for breath, each word trembling with panic. "I tried to hold on. I tried to keep it together. But they're at the doors now. I can't stall them anymore." The camera jolted as if something inside the studio had moved it. The frame widened, revealing the set from a distance. The chef's knife still lay on the counter. The empty chair beside Claire sat like a grave marker for Dan, and in the far corner, near the studio doors, shadows were bleeding in through the cracks in the frame. The laugh track triggered again, though this time it sounded like screaming slowed down. Long, distorted cries filled the speakers until they cut abruptly to silence. Claire flinched at the noise but pressed on. Her voice broke as she tried to hold back tears. "Mom, Dad, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I should have left when I had the chance. I stayed because I thought maybe people needed this, needed a piece of normal. But this isn't normal. It's a lie, and I can't lie anymore." The studio doors finally buckled. The hinges screamed, the metal bent inward, and the first clawed hand reached through, grasping for anything it could touch. The camera zoomed closer to Claire, as though protecting her from showing what was breaking in behind her. Her face was pale, her breathing fast and shallow. She leaned close to the microphone, voice soft but steady now. "This is Claire Whitman, signing off." She closed her eyes. The feed cut to black. For 5 long seconds, there was nothing, only silence. Static crawling faintly at the edges. Then, suddenly, the screen lit up one final time. Not the set, not Claire. Instead, a pre-recorded station ID played. The Good Morning with Claire and Dan jingle in its original, cheerful form. The smiling faces of both hosts appeared in a polished promo shot, frozen in perfect happiness. A voiceover played in a bright, artificial tone. "Thanks for watching, and remember, don't change that channel." But as the jingle ended, the promo image began to glitch. Claire's smile stretched to wide, splitting at the corners. Dan's eyes rolled back, black voids swallowing them whole. Their frozen faces melted into static. The screen went black one final time, and the broadcast ended. And that concludes today's broadcast of The Morning Show. Remember, smiles can hide screams, and comfort can conceal the truth. If you're still watching, you've survived. For now, stay tuned to Whispers Between Worlds, where we bring you horror every single day. Until next time, good morning, forever.